was the subject of one of the most famous no longer vegan scandals in history, have to say now 11 years later. I came across this article in The Guardian that was published a few days ago called "I'd Buy Fish and Hide It Under Kale, the star vegan chef who developed a taste for liver. What happened when a vegan influencer started craving burgers?" Of course, I was immediately intrigued and quickly realized that this article was about one of the original no longer vegan scandals that a woman named Alex Jamieson was at the center of. I'm not saying that it was actually the first no longer vegan scandal, but it seems like it was one of the first big ones of the internet age. And this is a scandal that I actually don't recall because it happened during a time when I wasn't vegan. But I'm guessing some of you might remember it because it seems like it was a pretty big vegan scandal that happened in the early 2010s. It also directly relates to the movie Super Size Me. So for some of you, this video might just be a walk down memory lane of revisiting a past scandal, while for others, it might be more of a sort of vegan drama 101 history lesson, which is more closely what it is for me. Either way, there's a lot to discuss here. In this video, we're going to talk about the original controversy, the Super Size Me connection, and Alex's modern day reflections on the situation as discussed in the Guardian article. So let's get right into it. It turns out that this article was part of a series that the Guardian did called The Influencers Who Pivoted. Alex was obviously one of those influencers. Pivoted is one word for it. The main picture of the article is her making this face and hand gesture of like, I don't know what you want from me. The article begins,
Alex Jamieson's veganism became world famous when she appeared in the 2004 film Super Size Me, the seminal Oscar-nominated documentary that probed our relationship with fast food. Jamieson was working as a vegan, health-focused private chef in New York when a conversation between her and then-boyfriend Morgan Spurlock, the film's star and director, led to the idea. Its success took them to 20 countries, won Jamieson deals for 3 books, including Vegan Cooking for Dummies, 25,000 subscribers to her vegan recipe and mindset newsletter, and $7,000 an hour speaking engagements across the US.
Before we go any further into the article, I want to talk about the roots of this scandal, which start with Super Size Me. For anyone who isn't familiar, which I'm guessing most of you are, Super Size Me was a documentary that came out in 2004, and the premise was that this man, Morgan, ate nothing but McDonald's for 30 days. It was supposed to be an experiment to see the effects on his physical and mental health. And it also acted as a sort of expose on the fast food industry. It was really well received at the time. Tons of people saw it. It was nominated for an Oscar and was, and still is, I would say, a cultural touchstone in many ways. I saw this movie in theaters when it first came out 20 years ago and hadn't seen it since, so I needed a little refresher. And thankfully you can watch it on YouTube. It is free with ads, so that's what I did. In general, it stood out to me that this was such a huge documentary feature film back then, but now it would just be like a really well-produced YouTube video that like Mr. Beast or Casey Neistat would make. At the time, it was certainly groundbreaking, but now I'm like, oh, there's videos like this posted to YouTube every day. I'm going to stay away from my thoughts on the movie in general because this video isn't about that, and also I really kind of just skimmed through to find the parts with Alex in it to remind me what her role was in the film and how she was portrayed. The Guardian article claims she and Morgan came up with the concept together, and I have heard her say that in other interviews, but it doesn't seem like she's credited at all, which I thought was interesting. I believe that she and Morgan came up with the concept together, but it seems like she wasn't credited in any kind of official way. When we first meet her, she's introduced as healthy chef Alex, Morgan's girlfriend and vegan chef. She talks about her thoughts on the experiment in general, which of course aren't very positive, which is kind of funny that her thoughts are so negative because weren't you one of the ones who came up with this idea? So I wonder if she was sort of playing up that negative response a little bit for dramatic tension. We then see Alex making Morgan this kind of Last Supper vegan meal, which looks like a really healthy and delicious vegan meal. And he's really savoring it because he's like, this might be the last time I eat a vegetable in 30 days. After that, the next time we see her is about an hour into the film, and it's Alex and Morgan having a conversation, and the scene starts mid-conversation, which is kind of weird. weird. And Morgan says, I'm not gonna completely become a vegan just because you want me to. She says he needs to think about what he believes about a system that is corrupt and immoral and wrong and hurtful. She asks him why he would want to be a part of it, what the disconnect is, and why he doesn't make that choice. He asks her if she's asking him why he doesn't make the choice not to eat meat, and she says yes. She then gives him a hard time for his apparent reason being because he likes it and it tastes good. She then makes a comment about heroin, and then the conversation just kind of devolves into this dumb conversation about heroin and ham. And he's like, honey, heroin, like heroin's not the same as ham. Like, I'm not gonna get strung out on ham for a few days. And it's too bad because I thought we were going to get a glimpse into how she feels about the ethics of fast food as it pertains to animals, but it really just kind of scratches the surface, and then it's like, is she saying it's immoral because it's unhealthy or because of the way the animals are treated? It's not really clear. Then in an interview, she talks about his overall lack of energy and sex drive as a result of the experiment. Later on, it shows Alex making Morgan a detox diet program to help him come down from his 30 days of McDonald's. At the end of the film, we see an update that on Alex's detox diet, Morgan's cholesterol and liver functions went back to normal in 8 weeks, then that he gave up being vegan. While I was rewatching this, I was thinking about the fact that me seeing this in 2004 was probably one of my first exposures to a vegan or the concept of vegan eating, and I don't really particularly remember that having a specific impact on me, but I'm sure it did somehow. It came out in 2004, I went vegetarian in 2006, I started eating vegan in 2007, so it's just kind of interesting. It also struck me that the whole concept of Supersize Me was an experiment of extremes. Therefore, it ended up being a great marketing opportunity for both of them. For him, it was, look at this crazy thing I did, and for her, it was, here's how you heal from that crazy thing he did. As the article mentions, they ended up having all of these public figure career opportunities as a result of the film's success. And I don't remember exactly everything that they did. The Guardian article highlighted a few of the things Alex did, but I know that they made a ton of public appearances together, and they would do these sort of press tours together. Getting back to the Guardian article.
Then in 2012, she began craving burgers. I started having dreams about salmon and waking up shocked, thinking I'd eaten it, she says. I went out for dinner and ordered tofu. A girlfriend ordered a burger and my mouth was watering. The irony was not lost on her, having gained followers and built a career after helping Spurlock back to health through veganism after his 30-day McDonald's diet for the documentary. More seriously though, more than a decade of veganism had made her ill.
For that last sentence to be presented as factual feels a little irresponsible. In fact, the whole paragraph feels a bit irresponsible because the reality is she helped Morgan back to health through 2 months of a whole food plant-based diet, not through veganism as the article claims, right? Like, she didn't nurse him back to health through him making the connection and committing to not harming animals through his lifestyle. It also states a decade of veganism had made her ill, which is not the way that I would put what happened, but let's hear a little more about that.
I initially went vegan around 2000 to help manage major health issues. I was a sugar addict with migraines most days. A doctor suggested she change her diet. There was a wall of health books in the library, she says. I'm a jump in with both feet person, so I read everything I could. I'd never heard of veganism, but after 10 days cutting out animal products, sugar, and gluten, I felt clear-headed.
Right off the bat, it sounds like she adopted a whole food plant-based diet for health reasons, which is not a problem. A lot of people do that, and it is very effective for a lot of people. The problem is, even though they keep talking about veganism, I have yet to hear anything about veganism in her story.
She quit her job in an entertainment law firm and retrained as a specialist chef. I didn't know how to cook for a vegan life and couldn't just eat quinoa and blueberries, she says. What she cooked in Supersize Me, with recipe inserts included in the DVD format, became my whole identity, she says. Instagram and the word influencer didn't exist then, but it did the same thing. It launched my personal brand. The speaking circuit and coaching followed.
I do wonder if Alex was always plant-based for health reasons and just a healthy, holistic chef, but felt this pressure to craft the vegan girlfriend narrative because it stood in such stark contrast to boyfriend who eats exclusively McDonald's for a month. It's just a better story for virality purposes. The vegan girlfriend and the McDonald's boyfriend. The plant-based for health holistic chef just doesn't quite have the same ring to it. And maybe it wasn't even her decision, maybe it was more Morgan or the editors of like, oh, let's put her title as the vegan girlfriend.
But by 2012, by then divorced from Spurlock and with a 6-year-old son, her energy was so depleted that she couldn't get off the couch. The doctor said I was so anemic she didn't know how I was standing up, she says. Knowing she needed iron, Jamieson started craving animal protein but was afraid of the public reaction. The vegan world was like any other community. People can be shitty. I'd often hear rumors of, I saw so-and-so author eating eggs. I was worried that would be me.
Something rubs me the wrong way about her calling people shitty for holding people accountable. What it sounds like she's saying is that there were other vegan public figures making money off of their vegan public image who may not have actually been vegan, and people were talking about that, which is understandable. Someone pretending to be part of a group in order to make money off that group is shitty. But she's calling the people who were calling that out shitty and saying she was worried it would happen to her. People can be shitty, you're right, but I don't agree about the people who you're calling shitty.
She gave in on a trip to Costa Rica with non-vegan friends who preferred she get well than fear judgment. I still remember the first bite of white fish cooked lightly in olive oil with a little salt, she says. I felt simultaneously fantastic and guilty. I was ashamed that I wasn't good enough. The next year was very stressful. I'd buy fish at the market and hide it under the kale. My acupuncturist recommended I eat liver, so I bought pate. I thought maybe I could just have animal products now and again to feel well.
I've talked about this before, how you kind of know people are bullshitting when they claim that after like the first bite of an animal product touches their lips, they instantly felt better. That feels so much more wrapped up in emotion than reality. Right? Like that's not how food and nutrition work. You don't just like instantly feel better while the food is still traveling down your esophagus. And I think that maybe clues us into more of a mental aspect at play.
The commercial impact of telling her followers was a consideration, but the bigger dilemma was the moral one. I felt like a liar. I stopped calling myself vegan and started using plant-based. I expanded my repertoire to healthy eating.
Again, though, nothing about the ethics as far as animals are concerned, just the moral dilemma of feeling like a liar.
Eventually, in March 2013, she put up a blog post entitled, I'm not vegan anymore. It went viral. I woke up to an avalanche of horrible emails, people not just wishing me dead, but making vague death threats.
Death threats are nothing to joke about, but I do wonder what a vague death threat is. Like, you might die.
Friends in the vegan world uploaded whole posts of their own calling me the devil. That was the worst part, people I actually knew turning their back.
Does this feel like possible hyperbole to anyone? I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but it does feel slightly hyperbolic. I did find a few blog posts from 2013 written in response to Alex's blog post. None of them contain the word devil. Obviously, there could be other ones that I haven't seen. While certainly containing a disappointed tone, they were all quite respectful of Alex, and they're really focusing on animals as victims.
She lost thousands of newsletter subscribers and speaking gigs dried up. There was a wave of negative book reviews too. But she also became a vegan confessional booth. People whose entire business was about veganism messaged privately or sent a text asking to go for a drink and said they'd been eating meat too.
What do you know? Other people who figured out a way to profit off vegans but weren't actually vegan themselves, starting a support group. Cute.
Now 49, she says, I definitely lost out. I also grappled with whether I'd set unattainable standards and made anyone feel worse about themselves. I had to be honest so I could move forward.
I'm not sure what she meant by I definitely lost out. I'm hoping she's not referring to all the money she lost out on that she could have made had she continued lying.
The virality of the blog and its backlash created new opportunities. She was asked to write another book, Women, Food, and Desire, and now works as a creative leadership coach with 15,000 Instagram followers. She's also an abortion rights activist.
We've seen this so many times before with no longer vegan public figures being able to successfully shift to making money off of a new target audience. Happened with Elise Parker, happened with Bear Grylls.
I eat meat almost every day, she says. Breakfast is 3 eggs and bread, and I still really like liver. There's something on a cellular level that is so satisfying. What she went through made her bolder. I've done the best I can, she says. Now that I've gone through it once spectacularly, I'm much more courageous about the changes I make in my life.
In my observation with these no longer vegan influencers, it's never like, I'm not vegan anymore, but I still eat mostly vegan. It's always such a dramatic swing to the opposite side. It's eating meat every day, 3 eggs for breakfast, liver, carnivore diet, etc. I would have assumed she would have deleted it, but Alex's no longer vegan blog post is still up. I read it and I want to talk about it. It is very long, so I'm only going to be responding to certain parts of it.
Dear friends, I am no longer vegan, and I am still passionately devoted to helping people be their version of healthy.
Is this worded wrong or am I having a stroke?
And I am still passionately devoted to helping people be their version of healthy and fulfilled as I can, by helping them accept their cravings, values, unique needs, and working with their bodies to create lives of meaning, freedom, and radical self-acceptance. I've been thinking of how to tell this story for some time now. You might want nothing to do with me after you read this. A lot of friends ditched me in the wake of this news, but I'm really hoping that you feel hopeful and breathe a sigh of relief, because this story is about allowing ourselves to evolve, learn, and continue growing. It's about all of us and how we create ourselves as we age.
It's all about us. It's about allowing ourselves. So far, the language in her post is very me-centric, nothing about animals, which is no surprise. Just pointing it out.
Back in 2000, when I decided to eat a vegan diet and live a vegan lifestyle, I initially did it for my health.
Okay, so it wasn't really, like, I hate to be that vegan to be like, well, then you were never vegan, but what she's describing is not veganism, it just needs to be pointed out.
My body was suffering from years of unhealthy eating, and a whole foods plant-based diet rebooted my entire being, quickly. It was a relief and a miracle in my mind.
Again, sounds to a T like someone who went whole food plant-based for health reasons.
The more I learned about how our food culture operated, how animals are raised in such unhealthy, horrifying conditions, and how animal protein production adds so significantly to global warming, I resonated deeply the vegan way. It felt good and clean. It felt right, and my body thrived.
So she finally mentions ethics and the environment, but it still sounds so me-centric and health-centric. It felt good and clean, it felt right, my body thrived.
But then a few years ago, something began to shift. I became chronically anemic. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and insomnia plagued me. For over a year, I tried everything within the vegan framework to turn things around, but nothing helped.
No one is required to disclose their medical details, but when it comes to these type of announcements, we're expected to trust these people's assessment of the health and safety of a vegan diet based on, just trust me, I tried everything. What would have given this blog post more credibility and have actually been helpful is mentioning what she tried, especially because she is, you know, at this time she was a health coach and seemed like she was coaching people on what to eat. Were you working with a doctor? What did you actually try? Maybe some of the things that you tried could be helpful to someone else. Considering this whole massive change in these people's lives hinges on this one thing, it's kind of bizarre to me when people are more than happy to share the medical details of the problem, more than happy to share what the last straw solution was, but never say a word about all the other solutions that they claim they tried, which often leaves me wondering if there were any. She then talks about how she started having lots of meat cravings.
I hid my cravings from myself and my community. Turns out I had reason to be secretive. I lost a lot of friends when I revealed I was eating animals again.
Well, yeah, because they thought you were vegan and then it turned out you weren't and that you were possibly lying to them. They thought they knew you and what you stood for, and then they were probably questioning that.
I ate more sea vegetables in order to add more minerals to my diet, as I had told so many of my vegan curious friends to do. I chose more protein-heavy plant foods on a regular basis. I avoided sugar and drank green juices by the pint, all in an effort to give my body the nutrition that I thought my body was asking for. I tried for over a year. I felt ashamed. If I was doing it right, I wouldn't still have these cravings, would I? And still the cravings persisted.
But again, were you under the supervision of a doctor? Did you discover that you did indeed have nutrient deficiencies? Were you problem solving together about how to resolve these deficiencies? Or were you just self-diagnosing and prescribing yourself lots of sea vegetables and green juice? I'm not saying that's all she did, but that's all she's saying she did. She then talks about her health coaching clients and how many of them weren't vegan, or some were vegan but were struggling with various issues.
And they were so ashamed that it didn't work for them when they thought it a moral, right, and kind diet. Ashamed that the weight loss others had experienced wasn't happening for them. They felt like failures. From that place, they craved something different. They were looking for a state of health and well-being where they didn't feel judged or guilty for their body's needs, or cravings.
This is all over the place. They thought it was a moral, right, and kind diet, but they weren't losing any weight. Like, those two things have nothing to do with each other. The moral, right, and kind aspect of veganism has to do with animal suffering. But it sounds like she's assigning moral value to the weight loss and saying her clients felt ashamed the weight loss wasn't happening and therefore they craved something different. Like, is it about morality? Is it about weight loss? Is it about cravings? This part is just all the fuck over the place. She eventually, as we know, gives in to her cravings. She says,
I would secretly visit restaurants or stores and buy contraband animal foods, scurry home, and savor the food in solitude. It's so strange now to realize that after working for 12 years as a health and wellness professional, I'd developed an eating disorder. It reminds me of that new term, orthorexia, the idea that we can become unhealthily obsessed with eating the right, perfect foods. And a glimmer of hope began to dawn on me, that I could support even more people to feel good and get healthy without the shame, judgment, and guilt if I brought my own struggle to light and shared my story.
I'm really confused by this part. Like, was this her coming out as orthorexic? And is she saying this sneaking around to eat animal foods was the eating disorder? Or the eating vegan for 12 years was the eating disorder?
Not long after I came clean to eating meat, Ellen DeGeneres, one of the most popular vegans around, mentioned that she had been eating eggs from her neighbor's happy chickens. The response from the vegan community was swift and harsh. Diatribes on blogs and Facebook posts against her for lapsing and lying were harsh. How is that compassionate, I thought? Compassion. This was a word I had given to the vegan community completely, but I began to realize that we need to offer compassion for all creatures, all animals, all humans, ourselves, in order to be truly compassionate. And I realized that by keeping my truth a secret, I was adding to the hostile food culture that so many feel trapped by.
When vegans talk about extending compassion to animals, it's, hey, these animals live horrific lives. They spend their lives in a constant state of pain, a constant state of fear and suffering. Then they get transported in extremely uncomfortable and stressful conditions to slaughterhouses, where they're slaughtered in horrific and traumatizing conditions leading up to the slaughter and often during. When vegans talk about extending compassion, it's, hey, we don't have to be a part of that. And choosing to not be a part of that is the compassionate thing to do. The compassion she's asking vegans to extend to humans has to do with diatribes on blogs and Facebook posts. I mean, she's right. Those are two completely comparable forms of suffering. I'm sure that the animals would rather go through what I just described than have a diatribe written about them on a Facebook post. Yeah, that's definitely the case. I'm not saying we should operate with a lack of compassion toward other humans. I actually believe very strongly in extending compassion to humans as well as non-human animals. But sometimes that involves speaking out passionately in a way that might not be soft and cuddly and palatable to everyone. Alex is now an abortion rights activist, and she seems to be very passionate about it. And I hope that's helped her understand the passion that vegans have for animal rights. But unfortunately, I don't really think it has, based on her quotes in the Guardian article. And also, I went to look at her Instagram and saw she had made a post about the article. This is what she said in the caption.
You have to swipe to the end to see the vegan hate I woke up to, again, after 10 years, 20 years after we made Super Size Me, 10 years after I secretly started eating meat to deal with chronic anemia, Guardian featured me in a series alongside Marie Kondo and other influencers who pivoted.
And she has some hashtags on the post: ex-vegan, orthorexia, evolve, influencer life, Super Size Me, meat eater, abortion rights, calm down. The comment she's referring to was seemingly a DM that said, you took money off big meat and told lies about veganism, you're a piece of shit, lady, fuck you. Obviously, it's not a nice comment, and I'm not sure what this person was referring to with the big meat part of it. I thought the hashtags were really interesting, the first one being ex-vegan, like, okay, 10 years later, you're still really leaning into that. And again, the term orthorexia, like, what is that referring to? Did you have orthorexia and that's what the problem was the whole time, not the vegan diet? Or are you calling veganism orthorexia? I'm not sure. Also, evolve. I kind of think you're going against the current of the way things are evolving, but okay. And meat eater, Cool, that's obviously how you identify now. I don't think Alex is a bad person. From interviews I've seen, she seems pretty nice. And I also don't want these types of videos to just be purely bashing someone for the way they handled a situation. I want there to be an element of constructiveness too. So here's what I would have wanted from her no longer vegan post, as well as her reflections on it 11 years later. Some type of acknowledgement that, hey, you know, I thought I was a vegan at the time, but now looking back and seeing the passion that vegans have about animal rights, I don't truly think I was one. Maybe I was just plant-based for health reasons, and I'm really sorry if I led anyone astray. I think I was just confused at that time too. I'm sorry to the people I hurt, etc. But of course it's never that, because there does always seem to be this level of ego involved, which I've talked about before in other ex-vegan videos. It does feel like in order to justify their current meat eating, the brain just can't even really go to the ethical part at all, so they have to make it all about the health part. To wrap things up, I feel like this whole story could be in the category of veganism being misidentified back then, and even now with the Guardian article referring to what Alex was doing as veganism so many times. If people could just allow things to be what they are, i.e. identifying themselves as plant-based for health reasons as opposed to vegan, I think the backlash wouldn't be so severe. Most people know what a passionate and underrepresented group vegans are, and some influencers possibly overly pander to them in order to make money off of them, literally writing handbooks on how to be vegan. And then once they've made a satisfactory amount of money, they feel like they can afford to be honest. And then, as I mentioned, that backlash often comes with a whole new wave of virality, possibly a whole new set of supporters and opportunities. And lightened from the burden of pretending to give a shit about animal suffering, they're finally free to speak up for the biggest victims of all, themselves. Let me know what you guys thought of this story, the original scandal, and also the Guardian article follow-up. Were you aware of this story when it first went viral, and what do you remember about the public reaction at the time? And if you're just hearing about it for the first time, what do you think? I really hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. I have this goal of getting to 5,000 subscribers by my 5-year channel anniversary, which is in May. I think we can do it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!